Hello everyone, good evening and welcome to all aboard. I hope all of you are well. A very good evening and welcome to the class, guys. So this is the spoken English course, and under this course we are focusing on the pronunciation and fluency module. In this class, the module or the domain that we are focusing on is pronunciation and fluency. In today's class, we are going to focus on the topic how to start a conversation. So a conversation is nothing but a dialogue and an equal contribution of two people, right? When two people contribute to a conversation, that's called a dialogue, and that is what we are going to study. So carrying a conversation forward in the English language is not difficult at all. You can always carry a discussion forward. Whatever be the topic at hand, you can always carry it forward. But what is difficult is breaking the ice. That is starting a conversation. How do you start a conversation, or where do you start a conversation, and how it can work in your favor? So these are the topics, these are the domains that we are going to focus upon in today's class. And without wasting any more time, let's switch to the PPT. I'll share my screen and let's start the class. So I hope you can see the PPT. You can switch between my screen and the PPT so that you can view the PPT better. So as I've already told you, we are discussing the pronunciation and fluency module under the spoken English course. The course is called Spoken English. So what are we focusing on? First, let us try and understand what are we targeting under this course. What are we trying to learn in this course? We are trying to enhance and improve our spoken English abilities, the way we talk to each other using the English language. Why is it important? Because English has become a professional language. It is widely used in professional domains, in professional circles, and it is also used widely in the academic circles. So that is why we are trying to improve our English abilities, that is spoken English abilities. So this is the module. Apart from this pronunciation and fluency module, we have two other modules in the spoken English course, and those two modules are grammar and vocabulary. So we are going to learn, or we are going to look at English language in a very comprehensive way. We are going to learn English in a comprehensive way. When I say this, I mean that we are going to learn the language as a whole. We're trying to cover all the aspects of the English language. So I hope the introductory part is clear. Now let us move ahead and let us discuss the topic at hand. That is, what are we going to learn in this session? We are going to focus on the fact that how we can start a conversation. So as I've already told you, in case of a conversation, if you are having a conversation with a person, if you are engaged in a conversation with a person, driving the conversation is not difficult. That is, carrying the conversation forward, driving the conversation. This part is not difficult at all. I'll give you an example. Suppose you are discussing about your upcoming exams with your friends. Suppose you are discussing about your upcoming exams with your friends. Now you are going to discuss about your preparation strategy. You are going to discuss about the topics that are most important, etc. So carrying a conversation forward, that is driving a conversation forward, is not difficult at all. Once you have a topic that you are discussing, once both the parties have a common topic that they like and they are discussing it thoroughly for say 2 to 3 minutes, driving a conversation will not be difficult at all. What is difficult is starting a conversation. And how do you start a conversation? That also matters. That also leaves an impression on a person if you are meeting that person for a first time. So in case of a professional setting, how you start a conversation becomes very important. So that is what we are going to focus upon in this video. That is what we are going to learn. How do we start a conversation in different scenarios? So when I say different scenarios, I mean formal conversation starters and informal conversation starters. So we will look at all this in detail. This was just the introductory part to the session. Before we begin, first I would like to highlight what we are going to learn in the video, or how we are going to proceed in this session. What are the domains? What are the aspects that we are going to cover? The first point here says introduction to the topic. So first we are going to look at the topic in detail. What is the topic in detail? The topic is how to start a conversation. So why starting a conversation is important, and how you can start a conversation, how it can work in your favor. This is what we are going to study in the introductory part of this lecture. Moving on, the second point says formal versus informal conversation starters. So here I am going to give you examples of different situations, be it formal situations, be it informal situations, and I'm going to give you phrases. Going to give you sentences, actual sentences and phrases that you can use in your day-to-day conversation. So here we are going to learn the phrases and the sentences that we can pick up and use in our day-to-day conversations, both in formal settings and in informal settings. But there is one point that you need to focus upon. The point that you need to focus upon here is what are formal and informal situations. So this also we are going to discuss briefly in this session. The next part is common conversation starters. So when I was discussing examples, when I told you that I'll be giving you examples or sentences or phrases that you can use in your day-to-day conversation, this is what I was talking about. We'll be discussing situations that you commonly land yourself in. Suppose you are in an elevator, suppose you are talking to a friend, suppose you are talking to a colleague at work, or for that matter, you might be talking to your seniors at work. How do you start the conversation? How do you carry the conversation forward? How do you carry yourself forward is what we are going to learn. And finally, the domains to cover. The last point here says domains to cover. So what are the areas that you can use or you can explore? What are the areas that you can explore to start a conversation? What can you talk about? Can you talk about the weather? Can you talk about the upcoming movies, the latest movies, the novels, etc.? So this is what we are going to cover in this session. How do you talk about these things? That also we'll cover. I hope the introductory part of the session is clear. If you have any doubts in the introductory part of the session, you can ask your doubts. Any doubts in the introductory part, do ask your doubts, guys, and let's make it an interactive session. Let's make it an interactive session. I want you to use the chat box effectively. Wherever and whenever you have a doubt, do not hesitate in asking your doubts. Because this is a generic course, that is, this is the spoken English course, you'll end up learning a lot of fun things also, right? So if you have any doubts in this part, do ask your doubts, guys. If this part is clear, we'll move ahead and we'll look at the introduction to the session or introduction to the topic. But do let me know wherever you have a doubt. So let's discuss introduction to the topic, that is, how do you start a conversation? How do you start a conversation? So first, let us talk about the fact that why starting a conversation is important. First, let us talk about the fact that why starting a conversation is important. Now, starting a conversation can have a number of advantages. It can have a number of advantages in different situations. For instance, in a professional setting, it can display your interest or your enthusiasm in the work that you do. So, in case of the first point, what does the first point say? The ability to start a conversation is an excellent skill necessary for networking and building relationships. So this varies from situation to situation. If you are in a professional setting and if you have this ability to interact with people, just a second, guys. Sorry for the interruption, guys. Let's continue our class. So we were discussing the first point, that is our ability to start a conversation is an excellent skill necessary for networking and building relationships. This is what we were discussing right now. So the fact is that if you have the ability to start a conversation in your professional settings, if in your professional settings you are worthy enough to start a conversation, that is if you are proficient in starting a conversation, you are displaying or you are reflecting your interest, in the subject, or you are reflecting your interest in your work. Now the next point here says that you act on the situation or personality of the person to begin a conversation. So this actually is a cue. This is a cue, this is a hint, or this is a tip. A tip that you can use to start a conversation. Act on the situation or on the personality to begin a conversation. What does this point mean? I'll elaborate on this point. Suppose you are in an elevator. Suppose you are in an elevator with a colleague of yours, right? So this person could be your senior, he or she could be your equal as well. So suppose you are in an elevator, you could comment upon the things that are going on around you. Or what you can do is you can simply break the ice by wishing this person good morning or good evening, acting upon the situation. When I say act upon the situation, act upon the personality, I mean whatever is going on around you, pick on those cues. Suppose the weather outside is very good, or suppose it's raining outside, you can pick up on these cues and you can simply start the conversation. So don't think too much, don't put in a lot of effort to start a conversation. That might ruin the ability, that might ruin the quality of the conversation that you have. It might seem like a forced conversation if you put in a lot of thought, right? So in case of a formal situation, when you are talking to a person who works with you, in case of a formal situation, make sure that you address the person appropriately, make sure that your tone and your body language is good enough. Apart from that, if you are on good terms with the colleague, you can talk about anything, right? So this is what I mean when you need to act upon the situation or personality of the person. Personality of the person. If you are talking to a friend, you can skip the salutations. You can skip the salutations and you can simply carry the conversation forward. You can simply drive the conversation forward. This is what I mean when I say act on the personality. So it differs from person to person also. The person you are talking to also makes a difference or also has an impact on the kind of conversation that you have. The last point says don't try too hard. So I've already told you that you do not need to put in too much thought into your conversation. Just make sure that your vocabulary is formal, your vocabulary is polite, your body language is good, it displays a professional attitude or a friendly attitude. What you need to keep in mind is that you need to be respectable to the other person and you need to be receptive towards the other person. When I use this word receptive, what do I understand by the word receptive? When I say the word receptive, it means that you need to listen to the other person carefully. Only when you listen to the other person, I'll write down this point because this point is very important. Only when you listen to the other person carefully will you be able to come up with a good enough response, and that will drive the conversation forward. That will also enhance the quality of the conversation that you have. So listen carefully and take time to compose your reply and then answer. So the next part says just show interest in the other person and ask questions if you are clueless about starting a conversation. So you can ask questions also. how's your work going on? Suppose you wish to start a conversation with a colleague. You can simply ask, how's your work going on? If you are having this conversation on a Friday, you can say, oh, do you have plans for weekend? If you are having this conversation on Monday, you can ask the colleague, how was your weekend? So these are clues that you can act upon. These are clues that you can pick up on and start a conversation, drive a conversation forward. So these are the 3 points. These are the 3 main points wherein point 2 and point 3. Point 2 and point 3 act as cues. They act as tips. These are tips that you can use to start a conversation, to strike a conversation, or to break the ice while you are having a conversation with somebody. The first one, on the other hand, highlights why starting a conversation is important. The kind of relationships that you build, be it personal relationships, be it professional relationships, will definitely have an effect on your future. So the ability to start a conversation will play an important part, be it in your career, be it in your professional life, or be it in your personal life. So I hope the first 3 points of the introduction are clear. I hope why starting a conversation and how starting a conversation can act in your favor is clear in your minds. If you have any doubts, you can ask your doubts. If you have any comments, you can make comments as well. So use the chat box effectively. If you have any doubts, you can ask your doubts. So if there are no doubts, we will move ahead and we'll look at the difference between formal and informal conversation starters. So I was discussing that there are 2 types of situations, or there can be 2 types of personalities that you interact with. And depending upon the person that you are talking to, depending upon the person that you are talking to, your conversation will either be formal or it will be informal. Depending upon the person that you are talking to. Suppose you are talking to your friends, suppose you're talking to your family members, or for that matter, you are talking to your colleagues, that is your co-workers. Maybe at times you will have informal conversations with your colleagues also, but conversations with your colleagues should strictly be professional. They should strictly be formal, guys. I'm warning this, and you can make a note if you want also. So let's first discuss the difference between formal and informal situation. What do you think is the difference between a formal and an informal situation? This is a question to you. I'll definitely give you points, but first I want to know, what do you think is the difference between a formal situation and an informal situation? Use the chat box, guys. You can use the chat box and you can speak out whatever is in your mind or whatever you think about the topic. So just describe what is the basic difference between a formal situation and an informal situation. Basic difference. Even single words will do. Even single words will be sufficient. Any clues that what is a formal situation or what is an informal situation? Right. So let's discuss. In English, we use formal language when talking to someone who is older. So you can take a note of this now. You use formal language when you are talking to someone who is older than you, that is when there's an age factor, or when you are talking to someone at your workplace, that is when you are talking to someone at your workplace, that is your co-workers, your co-workers. And finally, the third situation in which you use formal language or formal vocabulary, or a situation that can qualify as a formal situation, the third situation is that we can talk to strangers also. We can talk to strangers also. Strangers. And in case of talking to strangers, the conversation will always be formal. The conversation will always be formal. I hope this makes it clear. These are the three categories, or these are the three criteria, these are the 3 points or the 3 situations where you cannot avoid using formal vocabulary, formal body language, formal situation, right? So guys, any kind of doubts, do ask your doubts. If you have any kind of doubts, do not hesitate in asking your doubts. For all the other situations or conversations, we are going to use informal language, or we can be slightly informal. Now, when I say informal, I mean casual or friendly. Try to understand the fact that when we use this word informal conversation, or when we use this word informal, we mean casual or friendly. So when I say informal, I do not mean that you can use abusive language or you can use abrasive language. No, using abrasive language is a strict no in case of conversations with friends, family members, colleagues, people who are higher to you in hierarchy, that is social hierarchy, etc. So avoid abrasive language. The difference between the two terms, formal and informal, the difference between the underlying difference between these two terms is that in case of informal conversations, you can afford to be casual, you can afford to be friendly. But in case of formal conversations, you have to be respectful. You have to show your respect towards the other person. Why respect plays an important role in case of formal conversation? Because notice the domains that we are talking about. We are talking about people who are elder to us in age. We are talking about our co-workers, people who work with us. These people might be superior to us, they might be juniors to us, but we need to respect them equally. And finally, strangers, people we do not know, we have to be respectful towards strangers. So I hope the first part is clear. The difference between formal and informal is clear. Most of us tend to be informal with friends, which is absolutely fine. Which is absolutely fine. But when I say informal, the key word that you need to keep in mind is that you need to be casual, you need to be friendly, you can be candid, but you cannot be disrespectful. Now, examples of different formal and informal situations. This is what I want you to tell me. You have to give me an example of a formal situation. I have described the formal situations for you. Now, from your daily life, give me an example of formal and informal situation each. I want you to interact with me. I want you to participate in this session, guys. Any idea what can be a formal or an informal situation? I've given you sufficient examples. You can draw on these examples, you can borrow from these examples, and you can reflect upon your day-to-day conversations. So your formal conversations can be conversations that you have at your workplace or place of study, that is wherever you gain your knowledge, your education, so place of formal study, or other such places where you interact with these people, these three kinds of people. And all the other conversations, the ones that you have with your family members, with your friends, etc., come under informal situations. So moving ahead, formal versus informal conversation starters. What are the common tips that you can use? So we are discussing formal and informal conversation starters, and in this case I'm going to give you cues, I'm going to give you tips. What are the domains that you can focus upon? What are the domains that you can use to strike a conversation? What are the areas that you can use to strike a conversation? The first point here says ask for information. So asking for help, asking for information, asking for opinion. When you say, if you are stuck at work, suppose you need help at work, or you are new at work and you need information, you can simply ask for directions. You can simply ask for opinions. Suppose you are working on a project and you have completed that project. You can ask your coworker, what do you think about this? I've made this PPT. What do you think about it? I've completed this project. Can you please have a look at it and let me know what you think about it? So these are conversation starters. When you ask the person for information or for opinion, that person will definitely give you a befitting reply. And based on that reply that you get, you are going to drive the conversation forward. That is, you are going to carry the conversation forward. The next point says pay a compliment. So if you are with a friend, if you are with a colleague, you can simply pay a compliment also. This compliment could be on the work that he or she might have done, the work or the task that he or she might have done, or simply the way he or she might have dressed that day. So you can simply say, oh, you look beautiful today. Your dress looks lovely today. Oh, you look sharp today. When you say, oh, you look sharp today, it means that person looks fresh, that person looks bright, etc. Right? So do not be afraid to pay a compliment. When you pay a compliment to a person, that person is definitely going to thank you. One, that person will definitely thank you. Two, that person will definitely make a reply out of politeness, out of courtesy. And that reply will drive the conversation forward. So as I was telling you in the beginning, that driving a conversation forward or continuing a conversation is not difficult at all. What is difficult is starting a conversation. What are the cues that you can pick upon and start a conversation? So moving on to the next point, ask for help or offer help. So if you are at work and if you are stuck, if you are studying something, if you are in a classroom and if you are stuck, if you need help, do not be afraid in asking for help. So for example, right now, if a doubt comes up in your mind, I would strongly urge all of you to ask your doubts. I urge all of you to use the chat box. As you use the chat box and you ask me your doubts, I'm going to reply to your doubts, right? So you are asking for help. I am offering help. So this is driving a conversation forward. Ask for help, and if somebody asks you for help, be polite, be courteous enough to offer help. That will also affect the conversation, the quality of the conversation that you have. The next point says introduce yourself. So this is befitting in a professional setting. This will fit in a professional setting. How come? When you introduce yourself, or suppose you want to know the other person, if you wish to know the other person well, if you wish to know somebody, the first step is that you introduce yourself. What is the first step? That you introduce yourself first. This is the first step towards introduction. So if you are new at a workplace and you wish to make more contacts, if you wish to make or if you wish to meet new people, you first introduce yourself that hello, my name is Kanak, or whatever your name is. Hello, my name is Kanak. I've just joined this office. Would you be kind enough to guide me to the tea station or the coffee station? That's it. A line like this will start a conversation. Or if it's the other way around, if the person that you're talking to is new to the office, you can simply say, "Hi, my name is Kanak. I have never seen you around. Are you new to the office?" That's it. This sentence will introduce you. You are giving out your name. That is, you are saying, "Hi, my name is XYZ." And you are asking the other person what that person's name is. So introducing yourself also can be an important conversation starter. The next point says praise the person. We have already discussed pay a compliment. It can be a work or a task that the person has completed, or maybe you can comment on the physical appearance of that person. Ask about them. So the next point says ask about them, show genuine interest. As many questions as you ask, that will ensure a reply from the other person. Suppose the person has introduced himself or herself. Suppose you are having a conversation with me. Now, the next question that you can ask me is, "Ma'am, what is your qualification? When did you complete your graduation? Where did you complete your graduation from?" So as many questions as you ask me, I'm going to give you responses. I'm going to give you replies. And whatever reply that I give you, based on that, you can frame your next question. So if you do not know, if you are clueless about where to start a conversation or what to talk about, if you do not have a topic in mind, if you do not have a specific topic in mind, what you can do is you can ask questions. Asking questions will definitely drive the conversation forward. And show genuine interest. Why have I written this point, that is show genuine interest? Why is this point important? This point is important because only when you show genuine interest will you get replies that are interesting enough to drive the conversation forward. The next point is comment on the weather. Most cliched conversation starter, but definitely can be used. You can say, "Oh, the weather is lovely outside. Oh, it's too hot outside. It's raining a lot today. It's too cold outside. Let's not go outside today. Let's have tea inside the office itself." So these are the points, these are the conversation starters based on weather conditions. And finally, talk about a shared experience. So what is a shared experience? An experience that is common between you and the person you are talking to. An experience that is common between you and the person that you are talking to. So this is where you need to be slightly careful and slightly creative as well. Why creative? Because both of you have shared the same experience. Suppose both of you were at the same seminar. You were attending a seminar. What you can do is you can discuss points about the speakers. Whatever the speakers spoke at the seminar, you can discuss points. So what you are doing in this process is you are putting forward your opinions. You are putting forward your opinions. You have to be careful. When you put forward your opinions, you have to be respectful towards the person whose opinions you are referring to, and you have to be respectful towards the opinions of the person whom you are talking to. So this is very important, and this is slightly tricky also when talking about shared experiences. So now if you have a doubt in these cues or tips that we have discussed, you can ask your doubts. If you have a doubt in the cues or the tips that you can use, the common tips or the common conversation starters, be it formal or informal, you can ask your doubts. Or if you have comments to make, you can make comments also. If you have something to add to this list, that, "Ma'am, I use this tip to start a conversation with my friends," you can add it. So you have 20 seconds. If you have any comments to make, you can make them right now. Right. So let us move ahead and let us look at the next part. Formal conversation starters. Now we are looking at proper phrases or examples. Now we are looking at examples. I promised you that I am going to give you sentences. I am going to give you phrases that you can use in your day-to-day lives. Phrases or sentences that you can actually use. So suppose you are talking to a person named John. It could be anyone. It could be anyone that you know. Why is the name important here? We are going to discuss the importance of the name also. So the conversation starter here says, "Hi John, how are you?" So notice here, you are addressing the person. You are addressing the person using his or her name. You are naming the person. And in the second half of your sentence, you are asking a question. What have we learned about questions? Questions are important to drive the conversation forward. Questions will always drive your conversation forward. This is what we have learned. So in the second half, notice you are asking a question. You are simply asking, how are you? John will reply that yes, I'm fine, I'm doing good, I'm well. So these are the responses that you can get. Based on these responses, you can frame your next question. Or maybe John might ask you, yes, I'm good, how are you? John might also say, I'm doing good, thank you, how are you? So notice the thank you also is very important. If John says thank you, or if you are at the receiving end, that is, if somebody asks you, for instance, if somebody asks me, "Hi Kanak, how are you?" I would say, "I'm doing good. Thank you. How are you?" So notice the importance of this thank you. Thank you indicates politeness. Thank you indicates politeness. Because somebody has asked you how you are doing, somebody is concerned about your well-being, you must say thank you for your concern. Thank you for the person's concern. So that is why thank you is important in case of the response, and then you have to come up with the response yourself. Now we were discussing the importance of the name. Name makes it more personal. If somebody asks me, "How are you?" versus "Hi Kanak, how are you?" Notice the difference between the two sentences. Notice the difference between the two statements. One is addressed directly to me. One is addressed directly to me. The other one is ambiguous. The other one is ambiguous. It's not clear whether the person is talking to me or the 10 other people inside the room. So when you address one single person, it makes the conversation personal. It confines the conversation between two people, right? So this is the importance of the name. If you are naming the person, it will confine the conversation between two people. Asking a question indicates that you are interested in knowing the other person. So we have discussed this fact that questions will indicate your interest in knowing the other person, and it will drive the conversation forward. So what is the usage of this phrase? Where can you use this phrase? You can use this phrase with colleagues, with friends, friends whom you haven't seen for a long time. Because if you see your friend daily, it would make no sense to ask, "How are you?" Because you would know that the person is fine or the person is not fine, whatever be the situation. So it can be used with a friend whom you have not seen for a long time, whom you have not met for a long time, or at a conference or a work event. So it can definitely be used in a professional setting. When I say conference, work setting, seminar, etc., I mean your professional workplaces. I hope this part is clear. This conversation starter is clear. This was one example. Moving on to the second example. How's your day going, or how has your day been so far? So this shows your interest in the other person. That is, how is the other person doing? How has his or her day been so far? So it shows your genuine interest. If you are interested in knowing the other person will also be genuinely interested in talking to you. So suppose the day that this person has been having has been a hectic day, has been a hectic day. So what you can do is, "Oh, let's take a break and let's go out for coffee." So if the response is, "It has been hectic," if the response that you get is, "It has been hectic, it has been a busy day," you can say, "Oh, let's take a break and let's go out for coffee. And then we can resume work. So these are the responses that you can use. Not just the conversation starters, but the responses also you should be wary about. That is, you should be aware about these responses also. Because only when you have a vague idea about the kind of reply that you are going to get, can you frame your next question, right? So I hope this makes sense. Wherever you feel you are not getting what I'm saying, you can stop me, you can ask me to repeat, or you can ask me to rephrase. So do not hesitate in asking, guys. And where can this phrase be used? Where can this sentence be used? It can be used with colleagues, friends, roommates, your spouse, etc. So how's your day going? It's been hectic. Then you can say, oh, let's go out for coffee. Let's take a break. Let's catch up after work. Let's grab a bite. Various responses are possible. Moving on to the next conversation starter. This is again a formal conversation starter. Again, valid in a formal situation. What have you been up to lately? Have you got any plans for the weekend? Or how was your weekend? Depending upon what day of the week it is. So suppose it is a Friday, you can frame the first question, that is, have you got any plans for the weekend? Or if it is a Monday, you can ask, how was your weekend? So even though this might seem like a personal question, this can be used with colleagues, and colleagues who are at your same level, not the ones who share a higher hierarchy, but people who are at the same level with you, your co-workers who are at the same hierarchical level as you. These questions you can use with them, or these starters, conversation starters, you can use with them. So what have you been up to lately? Have you got any plans for the weekend? Or how was your weekend? So this conversation can be driven in any direction based upon the response. Whatever response you get, suppose your friend or your colleague says that I am planning a camping trip this weekend. Suppose your friend says, I am planning a camping trip this weekend. This is in response to the second question. Now, if your friend is planning a camping trip, you can drive this conversation forward in numerous ways. You can say, can I accompany you? Do you have all the necessary supplies? Or you can say, do you have any previous experience in camping? Where are you going? Will you be engaging in XYZ activities, that is stargazing or etc. So you can talk about various aspects of camping also. Once you have driven the conversation forward, once you have started the conversation, and once you have reached a topic that can be carried forward, you do not need to worry about the conversation. What you need to worry about is starting a conversation. How was your weekend? Suppose your friend is defining the camping trip that he or she made. So again, you can ask, how was your camping trip? Where did you go? What did you do? Etc. So I hope this answers a lot of questions, and you can frame similar questions also. You do not need to stick to these templates. You can make changes according to the person you are talking to. Disadvantage can be single word replies. That you get. So what have you been up to lately? If you get a reply, nothing. If the reply that you get is nothing much, this is what the reply that you get. You do not have anything to carry this conversation forward. You do not have any topic, or you do not have any cue to carry this conversation forward. So this is the disadvantage of single word replies or short replies. That is closed end replies. If it is an open-ended reply, that nothing, but I'm up for a camping trip this weekend. So this gives you a conversation starter, right? So this is the difference between open-ended conversation and closed-ended conversation. Moving ahead, nice to meet you. What do you do for a living, or what are you studying? This conversation starter or these conversation starters can be used with strangers. It can be used with strangers or people whom you are just or whom you have just been introduced to. As you can see, the usage of this phrase or the usage of these sentences can be made in situations when you have just been introduced to somebody. When you have just been introduced to somebody or when you are talking to strangers. So, nice to meet you. What do you do for a living or what are you studying? If the person is working, you will ask this question. If the person is studying, if he or she is still pursuing his studies, you will ask the second question. Paying a compliment or showing interest in the other person will give you content to drive the conversation forward. So when this person says that I am a content creator, if this person says I am a content creator, so you can carry this conversation forward. You can say, oh, that sounds like an interesting profile. What do you do? Or what exactly is your work? How do you describe your duties? You can ask questions. You can pay a compliment that this sounds interesting. This sounds interesting. When you say it sounds interesting, you are definitely going to get a reply from that person, right? So moving ahead, looking at informal conversation starters. Now, informal conversation starters. First, let us get back and let us revise what are informal conversations. We have discussed that in case of formal conversations, only three domains are possible. When you are talking to someone who is elder to you in age, that is someone who is elder to you in age, or someone who is higher than you in the hierarchy, that is in rank or in position, or when you are talking to a stranger, these are the three domains that will take up the formal conversation starters. Apart from that, all the conversations that you have, that is with your family members, with your friends, with your co-workers, etc., all these conversations can be classified under informal situations. So what are the topics that you can talk about? You can talk about sports, you can talk about books, ongoing events in the city, that is maybe there's an exhibition going on in the city, you can talk about that exhibition. What is that exhibition about? What is the duration of that exhibition? Where is that exhibition being concluded or conducted? You can talk about these things. You can talk about hobbies. Again, climate, again cliched, but you can definitely talk about climate. When you say, oh, the climate is so good today, or the weather is so good today that we can go out for a drive. When you make plans to go out with somebody, it will drive the conversation forward. You will describe the venue, you will describe how you'll go to that place, what you will do at that place. So talking about the weather, talking about the climate, even though it might sound cliche, but you can still use these conversation starters. And finally, travel. So you can talk about your upcoming trips or the trips that you might have gone to lately. So these are certain cues, these are certain domains that you can use in case of informal conversations. In case of informal conversations, we have already discussed that you can skip salutations. You can skip salutations. Moving ahead, informal conversation starters. Now looking at examples of informal conversations. What is the most interesting thing that you have read lately? So this will talk, in case of this conversation starter, the reply that you might get would be a novel or an article. This article might be an online article or an article in the newspaper, maybe a short story, etc. So depending upon the reply or the response that you get, you can drive the conversation forward. So what is the most interesting thing that you have read? Whatever reply that you get, based on that, you can carry the conversation forward. The next thing is, do you listen to podcasts? Which ones? So this conversation can go in two directions. It can be carried forward in two directions. Yes, that is an affirmative response, or no, that is a negative response. So in case you get an affirmative response, that is yes, I listen to podcasts, that person will definitely tell you one or two speakers or one or two podcasts that the person listens to. And if you get a negative answer, you do not need to worry about it. You can say that I am listening. You can talk about what you are listening to. So talk about the domains or the podcasts that interest you. So this is how you drive this conversation forward. Moving ahead, which movies have you watched lately? So depending upon the movies that you might have watched lately or the other person might have watched lately, you can drive the conversation forward. Now, this conversation again will depend upon the shared interests. If you share an interest, in these genres that we are talking about, maybe the movies that you have watched can then turn to plans to watch movies together, right? So again, these conversation starters or these tips can be useful. Have you been to the new restaurant, or have you tried the new cuisine lately, or have you tried a new cuisine lately? So this new restaurant could be a restaurant that opened up in your city. You can talk about that restaurant, and depending upon the reply that you receive, you can drive the conversation forward. If the person you are talking to answers in affirmative, that is yes, then you can ask, how is it? What do you think about it? So you can ask for the person's opinion here. If you get the answer as no, if you get a negative answer here, what you can do is, if you have been to the restaurant, you can talk about your experience. So talk about your experience. And if you haven't been to that restaurant, what you can do is, you can talk about the reviews, the general reviews that the restaurant might have received. Or have you tried a new cuisine lately? Again, yes or no will drive the conversation forward. Moving ahead, this brings us to the end of the session. I hope you liked the session, guys. Now I'll switch back to the screen, and in case you have doubts, you can ask your doubts. In case you have any doubts, you can ask your doubts. Otherwise, I'll be ending the session. So thank you for attending, guys. This brings us to the end of the session. I hope you liked the session. Go through these tips, keep these tips in mind, and we'll meet in the next class. Thank you. Have a nice day.